Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Monday, July 8th, 2019. We hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. Back at it to the grind once again. So let's get started with our first update of the week. And we'll start with our space weather like we always do. Solar wind speeds have increased quite a bit here over the past couple of hours. We're seeing at 426 kilometers per second with a density of 3.1, and those KP indices shot right up, by the way. We are sitting at a 4, and I'll show you the chart here in a minute. We do have a sunspot, and I'll go ahead and locate that for you guys here on our space weather page. Let's go ahead and take a look at it on the SDO. First, here is the graph showing us the spike in KP. We were at a 0 and then shot right up to a 4. So we will continue to watch this. I'm pretty sure we all can agree that this is kind of the time, the next couple days, we need to pay attention to what happens. That's a pretty sharp increase in KP indice in a short period of time to go from 0 to 4 like that. And we will continue to monitor that as we are flirting with storm conditions. Now, let's take a quick little look at this sunspot 2744, AR 2744 that is. Guys, this thing's located all the way down here in the southern hemisphere, so it's not really a relevant, well, it is to a point. This is the first sunspot, or one of the first sunspots of solar cycle 25. We have talked more and more about how these solar cycles 24 and 25, they're going to continue to intermingle. For the time being, this is a normal part of the transition from one solar cycle to the next, where we do have members of those future solar cycles still beginning to show up. And it started in December, really, I think, of 18. It's picked up a little bit more. Other than that, we do have a solar wind uptick expected on the 9th through the 10th of July from that coronal hole here, and I'll go ahead, and this is the one that we're probably going to be affected by on the 9th or the 10th of July. So my guess is going to probably be closer to the 10th, but we will keep our eyes on that as well. And just to take a look at a future as far as coronal holes or sunspots, now there's the one we were talking about in the southern hemisphere, and boy, it sure looks like we got a little bit of something developing down here again. We'll have to keep our eyes on the SDO motion. Let's go ahead and zoom in here. Take a look. It showed up better a little on the other graph here, but anyway, so that's what we're dealing with. Sunspot number 12. We broke our spotless day streak, and now we have a sunspot to look at. But other than that, after this one kind of fizzles out, we don't have anything on the horizon, no major coronal holes or anything like that as well. So for the time being, the sun will continue to remain quiet. And finally, some TSI information. Now, so we had a huge dip in TSI, 1360.23. Still staying in that 1360 range, but we haven't seen a dip like that in quite some time. Right now, the TSI as of June 27th, 2019 is right around the 1360.61 mark. So we saw a drop of nearly around 0.4 on the 25th of June. And as of the 27th, we're right about where we've been for the most part on average for 2018 and 2019. And it's been a while since we've been able to report on the TSI. It's been incomplete information for quite some time. Finally getting an update, and as you see, we had a little dip there in TSI, but rebounded quite nicely. All right, let's get started with the world news. Oh, by the way, one more thing before we get into that. The TCI is something that SPACEWEATHER.com started measuring and monitoring, and we also thought that it was important to point out as well. And the reason why is that I think in the first part of the space weather report, we're showing you, how weak solar winds are, because even at 425 for an incoming solar storm, that's still pretty weak for a solar storm, to be quite honest with you. Back in 2016 and early 2017, we were still getting wind speeds in the mid 700s, and they would peak out in the low 800 kilometers per second. We don't simply get those storms anymore. Right now, we're witnessing weaker magnetosphere, unfortunately, lower solar winds, and with that, it's allowing more cosmic rays into our atmosphere. Now, two things are happening. Not only are we allowing more cosmic rays into our atmosphere because of our weakened defenses, but we also are experiencing cooling in our most upper part of our atmosphere and other parts as well. But the TCI, the Thermospheric Climate Index, is something to watch. Record cold reading in 2009 of 2.05. Right now we're at 3.16, which is down from 3.38 from our last broadcast. So as we have cosmic rays entering the atmosphere, penetrating the Earth's core, heating it up within, creating volcanic activity, and then you have the cold atmosphere, and we all know it happens: cold and hot, contraction, expansion, earthquakes, volcano eruptions, so forth and so forth. So for those that believe that earthquakes and other activity like that can be predicted in other methods, I'm not disagreeing with you on that, but I do believe there is a correlation here of solar activity that possibly sparks these particular events. And let's go ahead and check out some world news here. Massive floods hit Tafalla in Spain. Extremely heavy rain hit Tafalla, a town in the province of Navarre in northern Spain on July 8, 2019, causing devastating floods. According to local media reports, the location received more than 3.93 inches in just several hours, causing the Secaucus River to overflow in several areas of the city and surrounding region. Numerous cars were swept away and homes and businesses were flooded. Let's take a quick look here at some of the footage, and there we have cars just gently flowing down these flooded streets. It gets a little more intense than this and other footage here, folks. That's actually the same thing. Here's the one I was watching before the show started, actually. Water's a little higher over here, a little faster moving. And the unfortunate, the scary part here, folks, is that vehicle with the brake lights, chances are somebody's inside with the foot on the brake right now, unfortunately. That is... I guess it could have been a little worse, that the vehicle could have been put into that vortice there. But this right here is not good, folks. So I just hope that the vehicle was shorted out. Possibly the lights might have been just shorted out because it was inundated with water. I hope that's the case. Seeing vehicles just being tossed around effortlessly in just a short period of time. Inside of a, looks like a grocery store here. Product floating in the water everywhere. More footage of this rainfall. Very heavy, by the way, as well. Lightning and thunder. But 4 inches, folks, in just a few hours. Over and over and over. Every time we go live, we can show a video or two of floodwaters like this.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll leave the link here on the website. Check it out, watchers.news. And an earthquake, 5.7 in southern Iran. Unfortunately, it is deadly. Shallow earthquake registered by the Iran Seismic Center hit a 5.7, and this was at 700 UTC time. A depth of about 10.5 miles. 1,000 people are estimated to have felt the very strong shaking, 17,000 strong, and 414,000 felt moderate. Over 2.5 million felt light shaking. Down here at the bottom, Widespread damage was reported across southern Iran. Water supplies in some areas have been disrupted. At least one person was killed and 24 others injured, local media reported. Numerous aftershocks hit the region with magnitudes ranging from 2.5 to 4.7. So unfortunately, one person has lost their life due to this earthquake. So it's important to continue to monitor certain areas around the world right now. I think a lot of us are watching California, and I'll show an update on that as well. But thanks to the watchers, this matters to us as well, not just because of our channel, but these folks deserve the awareness as well. And these kind of earthquakes kind of get swept under the rug, especially my mainstream media, when you have events like what's happening in California. So important information here from the watchers once again. Appreciate that. Leave the link here at our website. And let's continue on. Now, we saw heavy rain in Spain today. Not quite as horrific, but we did see some flash flooding today. And in just 1 hour, some areas west of the capital region, I could say that easily 3 times fast. So anyway, areas west of the capital region saw 3 inches of rain, especially along the Potomac River. Areas concerned include the Great Falls, Virginia, and southeastern Montgomery County in Maryland. Reagan National Airport, an official observing site, saw around 2.79 inches of rain in just 1 hour, beating a 1945 record of 2.05 inches. The Washington Post reported more rain fell in that hour in the capital than the last 38 days combined. More than a dozen water rescues were performed after raging floodwaters turned numerous roads into rivers. Let's see if we can find some video footage. Take a look at the radar, the satellite view earlier today. And here's just a few pictures, people standing on top of their cars. Again, this happened so fast. I mean, 3 inches of rain in just an hour, folks. I was hoping to see if there was a little bit more footage in this. And it's crazy to me how well we can get footage from overseas. How easy it is to get all of this wild footage. How difficult it seems to be sometimes in our own backyard, and this is just massive foundation damage here, folks. And this is, of course, the saturation of all the rain, especially when you get 3 inches in just 1 hour. It's insane. Here we go. Georgetown Pike, Scotts Run Nature Preserve. So parts of the capital today were looking like areas like we see in Spain and other areas that have seen severe flooding and flash flooding, more road damage. Go ahead and stop that. So that was actually a topic of discussion on some of the news channels today about the flooding out. Thank God I didn't hear anybody mention anything about man-made global warming. That was at least there was at least one highlighting today. 6 people killed, 28,000 affected after a rare tornado hits. I think it's Kaiyang. Economic loss over $145 million here in China. Let's go ahead and take a look once again. Thanks to Watchers.news. A destructive tornado hit the city of Kaiyang, northeast China's Liaoning province on July 3rd, 2019. Killed 6 people, injured 190. The tornado was packing winds of about 82.8 kilometers per hour. It struck the city around 17:15 China Standard Time. It tore through an industrial park, moved towards the south. Its total time of duration was about 15 minutes on the ground. So that's about the average length of a strong tornado here in the United States. Usually they're on the ground for about 10 to 15 minutes. The tornado was accompanied by heavy rain and hailstones wreaking havoc on apartments, factory buildings, and electricity poles. It affected 28,600 people, killed at least 6, and injured 190. And that 0.63, a little confusing, might be just a little typo there, folks. Of the injured have been discharged from the hospital, while those remain hospitalized are in stable condition. Water supply and power have been restored in the affected regions. Let's take a look at this tornado. My goodness. And you know it's rare because we have people standing on rooftops photographing this. If they only knew the real power and destruction of these things, this is not recommendable. This is not safe. Again, we are seeing some wild footage this year in rare areas, but again, I think we're seeing it because these folks don't realize just how dangerous this particular situation is. So again, guys, if you're going to take footage of these storms, make sure it is safe where you are. If it's not safe, it's not worth getting hurt or even killed for just a few minutes of video. Hailstones size of tennis balls hit south central France. So we go from hot to cold to hail. Huge thunderstorm has bombarded the French region with hailstones the size of tennis balls and include a record number of lightning bolts, providing a deluge of impressive content for social media. The meteorological calamity led to the classification by Meteo France of most of the country as being at second to worst level orange weather threat on Saturday. And that is legit tennis ball, if not baseball sized hail. Here we go, some video footage. My gosh. And just judging by some of these splashes, you got to think some of these might be a little bit bigger. More footage from the hail. I'm not quite sure what's going on here, but I see. So this is okay. That's a valid effort. It appears he has a beer box, an empty 12-pack of beer as a helmet from the hail, and he is trying to spread out other pieces of cardboard to protect his car from. Let's roll that beautiful bean footage once again, folks. Yeah. So he's smashing the boxes. Beer box on his head for the helmet. I see. Not so sure that it did any protection whatsoever, but again, entertaining footage nonetheless. If there is any silver lining, that was a little bit entertaining, actually. Thunderstorm also set a record for the most lightning bolt strikes, was 73,700. Most of those mainly over the Auvergne-Rhône Alps. The French South had already witnessed a massive hailstorm in mid-June, in which 10 people were injured and serious damage was met to all property and local vineyards during that last storm. So we'll leave the link on our website. That one was brought to us by RT. And kind of a bit of a recap article here for the earthquake in Southern California, which right now a lot of us have a particular interest in watching what is going on down there at the current time. The seismic 1-2 combo that hit Southern California last week has left residents particularly unnerved because it robbed them of a single bit of solace that normally comes with a big quake, the sense that the worst is over. After the 6.4 magnitude quake hit near Ridgecrest on Thursday, many expected aftershocks that would gradually decrease in strength and frequency. They've been through it before, Northridge, similar, Whittier. But when a much larger 7.1 earthquake struck Friday night, the shock quickly gave way to a newfound dread. What's next? People a little bit freaked out and sleeping outside. I was speaking to somebody about this the other day, and I think a lot of people, when they think about earthquakes, they think about the movies. They think about the cracks opening up in the ground and people falling in, cars falling in, and that's That's movie style stuff. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but that's not the usual with an earthquake. Where I'm going with this is that an individual I was speaking with about people, what's the best thing to do during an earthquake, and it's run outside of your home, get in the middle of the street. And the person looked at me like, oh, why would you want to go outside? That you would fall in the cracks and this and that. And here is a perfect example of what I was talking about. These people are camping it outdoors. They don't want to wake up in the middle of the night with their roof on top of them. Under the shade of a salt cedar tree next to a shipping container near a sign that said, "Prayer changes things." The birds of Trana had camped out overnight and planned to for the foreseeable future. A sleeping bag was laid out on the patchy grass. Bags of chips, candy surrounded a basket of green apples, fruit on a picnic table. The birds' mother, Kay, father, Fred, sisters, Karen, Cynthia, and the latter's daughters, Brooke, were trying to recreate a household after 2 major earthquakes. And just kind of waiting this out, folks doing what they got to do, and they're doing it outside. As you can see right here, these people are not messing around, a little bit freaked out with the current situation. And I don't blame them. A lot of folks have that conception that once you have the big one, then that's it, and you get the aftershocks, and then it's over. And then these folks were hit with a 7.1. Now, what we are also expecting, and I know a lot of you guys follow various channels. Dutch Sense is one that a lot of you comment in our comment section about, and that guy is doing some pretty good work right now as far as calling these earthquakes and explaining what's going to happen next. So we've been kind of on this earthquake watch, following the information from guys like Dutch, and we haven't seen that transfer of energy yet from these earthquakes. That we haven't seen them going east. And the way he explains it is that right now they're log jammed up. This energy is just blocked. So we continue to see these little earthquakes along this same area, filtering down energy a little bit at a time. And again, I kind of had that feeling today, like, well, nothing happened last night, nothing happened the day before. Maybe we're okay, maybe we're out of the woods. And just thinking back, and Mari also reminded me as well, this is the time where we can't let our guard down. Today and tomorrow are actually the 2 days that we were expecting to see any kind of action as far as if there was going to be a bigger earthquake. Now, it's possible we could see something happen that isn't quite as bad, who knows, but right now a lot of the information leads that they are expecting in the LA basin another large quake out that way. So we will continue to watch this. I know Mari has had her finger on the pulse since July 4th, and she used to live in California, so this kind of like, if anything, she can appreciate her situation now as far as living here in the Northeast compared to being in this area. And there is a sense of fear right now, folks. I mean, let's be honest. This area is always talked about with the big one's coming, the big one's coming. And finally, the worries almost seem imminent and real. Guys, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this quick message.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.
All right, guys, we're back. And these are some of Mari's lovely designed shirts, Cosmic Rays. It's the Sun Stupid, and if you're really into the graphs and stuff, nice little CO2 lags temps sweatshirts by hundreds of years. Thank you, Mari. God love her. All right, climate news. More from Mari here in a bit, actually. Brits lose interest in green cards as government cuts subsidies. And I said green cars, not green cards. And when I saw this article, I said to myself, yeah, you don't say. So what happened? Number of green cars sold in Britain has fallen for the first time in 2 years after the government cut subsidies. Last month, 13,314 alternatively fueled cars were registered. That's 12% less than June of 2018. Sales of pure electric cars rose sharply, but this was offset by a huge decrease in the number of hybrids, which run on a combination of battery and gasoline. The Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders said that it was the first time since April 2017 that the eco-friendly car sector had seen a decline. The figures will come as a blow to government's ambition to promote clean alternatives to traditional petrol and diesel cars. So prices of the cars went up as well. Not just subsidies being cut, but prices were going up on these particular vehicles. And I've looked into some of these electric cars and when the battery finally has to be replaced and what the cost is. Some of these batteries start at $8,000, and then you got to take it to the dealership to get it properly installed. There's another $5,000 in labor. So next thing you know, you've got $13,000 in battery costs. $13,000 is enough to buy 2 decent used cars that are economically good on gas. Easily. And in 8 years, how many miles do you have on that car? Is it worth putting $13,000 worth of battery work into a car that might have 80,000 miles in it? It's not even worth $6,000 at that point. So, if anything, cutting the subsidies did the consumer a favor. They're going to stop buying these electric cars. And I get it. They were getting tax breaks, subsidies. They're getting paid for this. That's motivation. I myself have a hybrid, but it's not for lack of emissions. It's for the gas mileage I get. I do a lot of driving in my profession. And I save a lot of gas money. In fact, a lot of times I can drive several hundred miles and not have to fill up for 2.5 to 3 weeks. But the point of this article today, for the reason why I brought it up, is that it's funny to me that this green movement is motivated by what's in it for me. Same thing with the Paris Treaty. Iran last year was complaining about not receiving its payment yet for this treaty, and they were threatening to leave the Paris Climate Treaty. Now, I don't think anybody cares less at this point about if Iran stays in a climate treaty, considering what's going on over there right now. But my point is that you take away the money and you start to see the true colors of these governments. And if this was ever about saving the planet, if this was ever about man causing climate change, if this was ever about that, people should be willing to cut emissions regardless of the financial benefits from this, because we're trying to save mankind. Am I right? But that's not how it works. And that's why this man-made crap lie is held to stand its lies, because there's too much money involved with it. So many people are given money to study the effects that man has on climate change. And just like I've heard over and over and over again, if you question that theory, then you're labeled as a climate denier. And so goes on the dramatics of the battle of climate change, which I'm not wanting to get into. But again, you remove the tax incentive from this, and people don't care. And the reason why they don't care is because they know, or they've been told, that man doesn't influence the climate. This was always about a tax break. This was always about what's in it for me. The minute they took the money incentive out, people stopped doing it. So it can't be that serious. We cannot possibly be in a climate crisis that can be stopped by mankind if people are just simply giving up on trying to cut emissions. The pure intentions of these people is not to save this planet, folks. It's to line their pockets with more and more money. Some of these governments are realizing how much money they're actually wasting. And here's a Here's an article that kind of made me giggle a little bit. Insurance Journal. Maybe they need to hire some researchers. Nobody seems to know why the hailstorm losses suddenly began rising in 2008. Oh, that's ironic. 2008. What happened during 2000? Oh, that was the weakest solar minimum and deepest solar minimum that we had in over 150 years in solar cycle 24. So I guess that means that that's when we really started seeing the magnetosphere significantly weakening, and we started to see the increase of cosmic rays back in 2008. Because you know what? I don't remember this kind of damage from hail when I was a child growing up in the 80s and the early and mid 90s. So I watched this, or I read this, and you know, talking about Obama and all this money stuff and everything, but at the top they don't know how this happens. And but where was it? The bottom? Was it the bottom here? There was something that sticks out to me. Oh yeah, here we go. So this is it. While no one can say for sure what is driving the losses, the odds are they'll continue to rise in a time of climate change. In a time of climate change. He's not saying in climate change. While 2008, why 2008 and why since? It is an open research question, according to Andreas Prien, a researcher at the National Center of Atmospheric Research in Boulder, Colorado. And as far as I know, nobody has the answer to that. That's because, well, I'm right, I'm not going to speculate. It might be maybe just luck that in the last 11 years, hailstorms just hit the big, yeah, just luck. So this guy here is just, you know, it's luck. It's luck that a time where we start to see an increase in cosmic rays in 2008, after having a weak solar max in 24, and people say, well, Jake, we had like, what, 140, 160 sunspot peak. We're still below where we should be. I think the average is between 180 to 220 for your peak. So 160 wasn't like setting the world on fire low, but it was lower than normal. Therefore, we were still looking at a weaker magnetosphere, weaker magnetic shield during the 2008 and 2014 2008 minimum, 2014 through 16 max. And then we start to descend into the solar minimum in 2016. So here's your answer, and I'm pretty sure a lot of us here will agree. Why 2008 and why since? Grand solar minimum conditions is why. This is natural. This has been talked about and predicted even before this all happened and started happening on a daily basis like it is now. This was already predicted. The hail, the floods, the cloud coverage, the volcano eruptions, the earthquakes, the historic snowfall, the historic temperature swings, the crop loss, the historic crop loss we're going through right now. Wednesday night, we're going to go over our crop report, see what we can see this week. And I like how they present a little poll at the bottom here. Which do you think is the main reason of hail loss suddenly rose in 2008 and have remained high since then? Construction cost. Meaning the reason why the insurance claims are so high is because it's so hard, it's so much more expensive to do business. The second reason was fraud. And then the third was expanding cities with more targets to hit. And not likely. Storm frequency. Yeah, okay, we've definitely seen an increase of that. Improved reporting. Maybe. Nobody really knows, or other. And, well, let's just go with the nobody knows. Let's just say nobody really knows. Let's do the vote. And there you have it, folks. Storm frequency was the number one answer. And if that isn't a big correlation, that we are heading to the bottom of this minimum, this very low point in solar activity, and everybody can agree on one thing, and that is storm frequency. That's because we are seeing these storms frequently because of our conditions in our atmosphere due to this solar cycle that's happening right now. Lower solar activity, lower magnetic field, increasing cosmic rays, more hail, more rain bombs, more damage. And that's why we're seeing all this insurance increase in claims. Has nothing to do with, I'm sure there's still fraud out there. I'm not saying that, but I think those of you who follow this channel know what I'm trying to say. This winter saw the most honeybee loss since 2006. They corrected that earlier. It said 16. But nevertheless,
It does say 16.
it does in the headline, but when you click on the link, it says 2006.
Weird.
Yeah. Anyway, typos happen. From October 1st to April 1st, an estimated 37.7% of U.S. managed honeybee colonies that are not wild were lost. The number is up 7 percentage points from the last winter's count and is the highest level reported since Bee Informed began the survey in about 2006. In the survey, beekeepers also said that a 22% loss would be acceptable, but even that number has increased from previous years. This increased acceptable loss may indicate that beekeepers are more realistic and pragmatic in their expectations of colony losses. Surviving the winter is an indicator of bee colony health. Because surviving the winter months is an indicator of the health of the bee colony, an increase in winter loss means bee colonies could be weakening overall. The survey also reported that the United States lost 40.7% of managed honeybee colonies in the past year, almost 3% points higher than the average annual rate of loss reported by beekeepers since 2010. Now, why am I mentioning this? Earlier today, I saw a video of honeybees all over the concrete. Most of them were dead. Some of them were still alive, but they were like buzzing around in circles as if they were affected somehow. Now, it is interesting that there's a possibility that there's these pesticides that have been sprayed, and I'll talk a little bit about this because I don't want to get too much into it, but temporary further pushback from focus on bee conservation promoted by former President Barack Obama, and it's at least the third bee-related data set suspended under Donald Trump. So they've suspended, according to what, from what I understand, thanks to Mari, is that Trump suspended an EPA review and approved the use of these pesticides. And there are some people who are concerned that these pesticides could be causing the deaths of these honeybees. The thing that really concerns me is this article is about bees, okay? I want to read this part really quick. So, most plants rely on pollinators like bees to reproduce. So if the bees disappear, it doesn't only affect honey. Many crops that humans rely on could start disappearing too. The USDA notes that pollinators, most often honeybees, are responsible for 1 in every 3 bites of food we eat. They also increase the nation's crop value each year by over $15 billion. But also want to point this out as well. This was mentioned as something that could be concerning for our food security as well. And we're just talking about bees, right? But we really don't realize how important these creatures really are. And I'll tell you, I've learned a lot over the past several years about bees. I used to be really like kind of a wuss about them, kind of afraid of them, didn't like them. You know, I've been stung a few times in uncomfortable spots and would always swat at them or whatnot. And now I realize I just get away from it. I don't attempt to kill it. We don't need any more issues with crops than we already have. And now we're hearing that 37.7% of bee colony loss this year due to the cold winter, and it's supposed to be colder this winter. But when you start seeing people talking about your food securities being in danger because not only just crop loss from floods, And here's the statement. The increase in bee colony loss during the winter is another sign of increasing deaths and disappearances, leading to what some call a bee crisis and putting food security at risk. Right there. So when I see people like Diamond over there at the Oppenheimer Ranch Project inserting a queen bee into a beehive and then checking on it months later and the box is full of new bees, the colony is thriving, there's honey everywhere, and you know what? That is amazing stuff right there, guys. That is gold. All right? My new appreciation for that had come before I'd seen his channel with that video. So the point is I'm trying to make is that it is so important that we preserve these honeybees. So I guess for the first time ever in the last 2 years, this is something that I'm definitely going to oppose as far as Trump canceling these EPA reviews and using these certain pesticides. I'd hope that maybe possibly we can start raising awareness and hopefully get a second look at the pesticides that they are using, because I can tell you right now, the footage I saw today, if those bees were dying because of some frequency level from after an earthquake, because coincidentally this happened right after the earthquake in Southern California, bees all over the place. It's either a coincidence that the earthquake had happened and we found thousands of bees on the ground, or it had something to do with the fact that this pesticide that we're spraying now is also killing off bees, and it was just a coincidence that there was an earthquake on top of that. So this is a serious issue. I take this very seriously just because it's a bee crisis and we're talking about putting food security at risk. This is not a fear-mongering website. This is on a local ABC channel, channel 12, KSAT. So, you know, it's these little things that you dig for. And I was just kind of browsing Google tonight looking for things to talk about for tonight's show, and I saw this article kind of buried away. And like I said, what pulled me in is I just saw footage of bees that were dead all over the ground after an earthquake, but then I see this article talking about how much we've lost, and then it's possible the earthquake had nothing to do with those bees dying, but the pesticides that are being sprayed. And unfortunately, our government is allowing this. So hopefully we can get his attention and maybe have him take a second look, because without bees, we're going to have a serious problem, on top of the fact that we've already lost a ton of crops so far this year in 2019. Extreme weather takes economic toll on the Midwest. This is something we probably talk about all the time. They're saying $12.5 billion. We're used to seeing hurricanes causing a lot of damage, not used to this much damage from flooding rains in the heartland. And combined with tornadoes, hello there, sir. No, thank you. So in April, AccuWeather predicted total damage would be around $12.5 billion. Now it looks like that prediction is coming true. Leading that was the loss of corn and soybean crop. In the case of corn, and a couple $2 billion compared to the crop production's ultimately going to be, and probably $5 or $6 billion in soybeans. The rest of the $12.5 billion is made up of damage to homes and cars, and the roads that were washed out, bridges, loss to businesses. So it really has been a terrible spring in many parts of the Midwest. Silver lining, not much of one. The fact that the drought has been canceled is a very small victory here. The drought has ended, but so has some of these farmers' career. Another thing that I liked about this article, I didn't see anything about man-made climate change. Thank you. They did talk about climate change, but the way he phrased it here is there's always been extreme weather. Because the question was asked, how much of this is due to climate change? And it says here, there's always been extreme of weather. And there continues to be. The relation to climate change is still being debated. So it's certainly not clear-cut. And we have to put it in context, said Myers. Weather is changes that occur over a period of years. Climate usually is thought of more than 30 years. In between, there's a transition. So this Myers person is basically, without being blunt about it, is taking the side of the natural climate cycles. Perhaps he's aware of grand solar minimums. Perhaps he's aware of solar cycles. Perhaps he's aware of what's coming. And I just thought it was weird that he's mentioning 30 years, and his climate is usually thought of more than 30 years. In between, there's a transition. So, lots of interesting stuff, guys. You got to dig for it. That's the crazy part. And Mari and I have always talked about how we never see these types of stories just right there out in front of your face so you can just find it easily. You really have to work at this. All right, guys, stay tuned. We'll be right back with our look at our weather.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.
So, high chance of a tropic depression or tropical storm forming in the Gulf of Mexico later this week. And I say that because we don't have any really confirmation of the word hurricane yet.
Well, you might have heard a little bit of a buzz about a possible tropical depression.
Yeah, we did. Okay, so at a glance, an area of low pressure will form along the front in the northern Gulf of Mexico on Wednesday. This is an area where July tropical storms have formed in the past. If enough thunderstorms persist around the area of low pressure, tropical depression or a storm could form. The future track and intensity of this potential tropical system are uncertain, and we're only a couple of days away from it, so it's actually kind of amazing that so many people are disagreeing with what's happening here. But we'll talk about low pressure will form in the Gulf of Mexico later this week on Wednesday, and there is an increasing likelihood of it gradually becoming a tropical depression or storm. But its potential future track and impacts are still uncertain. The National Hurricane Center has outlined an 80% chance of tropical development late in the week in the northern Gulf of Mexico. This area of interest has been deemed Invest 92L by the National Hurricane Center. That's a naming convention used to identify weather systems that could potentially develop into tropical depression, blah, 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 blah. The previously mentioned area of low pressure is expected to develop in the northeastern Gulf of Mexico on Wednesday, according to the NHC. If the circulation center remains over the water and becomes better defined with concentrated shower and thunderstorm activity, then it could become a tropical depression or storm late this week. In the near-term future, pockets of heavy rain may trigger some localized flash flooding the first half of the week from the northern Gulf Coast to Florida, the parts of the southeast. This rain will be caused by the upper-level disturbance. And even right now, folks, 1 to 2 inches tops, looks like, in some of these areas. So here we are, late week. This is the low pressure system. They're not sure which way it's going yet. And I've seen lots of smack talk out there about this storm coming up. I'm not really going to get into that. Let's go ahead and take a look at GFS, and we'll do our own research. Oh, here's some hail. More hail for you here. And this is Idaho. Mari actually showed me some flooding in this area as well in southeast Idaho. Take a look at our live weather map right now. All that rain that was in the DC area has moved off, but North Carolina and South Carolina is getting pounded with some showers. Let's go ahead and take a look. Let's see this. Yeah, we got windy up. All right. As you see right now, not a whole lot of major action happening at this point. We do see showers and thunderstorms in North Dakota, parts of southern South Dakota. Nebraska, you're getting hit pretty good right now. Eastern part of Colorado, entering in near Almena, Kansas, and Norton, Kansas. You're going to get some rain. Billings, Montana, with some decent rainfall. Lots of lightning out there too, folks. Smaller storms in the south, nothing really too major happening at this time to speak of. So let's take a look at this storm. There's several models to look at, by the way, guys. And GFS, basically, let's get the old arrow out here, guys. Let's pay attention where this is going to be. I'll move it up a couple clicks. Here we are on July Let's see, July 11th right here. That looks like what might be the possible center of this storm where my arrow is pointing at. Well, let's watch this area, July 12th. Now, this is the GFS model. GFS, out of all of these models, has been the sloppiest, the most disorganized storm model so far. And this thing is kind of just hanging out in the Gulf for a few days. Thankfully, not on land so far. But as we go into July 13th into the 14th, landfall finally happens. But guys, the GFS system has this storm just gone. Just some thunderstorms and shower activity across the south through the rest of the month, through the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley. So, then we got another Eastern Pacific storm that just kind of peters out too once it gets to the Baja. So let's go back here and let's check out a couple different models. Let's go to the Euro, because the Euro right now is the most aggressive out of all of them. And let's take a look. This is July 8th. Here we are, July 12th. We have something forming here. Let's go ahead and get this. I know, terrible combination here. You can barely see my arrow, but this storm here, the Euro has it making landfall right around near the Houston area or the Louisiana border. And let's take a look and see what we have. Yeah, so right there on the border, landfall. This is July 14th on a Sunday. And this storm kind of wanders out towards Oklahoma, across Oklahoma and Tulsa, Oklahoma City, I should say, before it kind of gets on a track and heads out across the Midwest. And a good chance that we could see some remnant rainfall in Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, parts of northern Kentucky, and further eastward. So that's the Euro. Right now, the Euro version has it looking the scariest. And that's a pretty impressive looking storm right there at 990. If that were to hold, that could be a decent Cat 2, Cat 3 storm. 986 as it's over land. That's a pretty low. Not terribly low, but pretty low. So this storm could be pretty impactful. And it's really going to have to be one of these things we're going to have to watch on a daily basis. Because I'm telling you, this storm shifts one way to the other. It's going to make all the difference when it comes to where this thing is going to track. And, you know, my question or my thoughts, according to this storm is going to move up through Oklahoma, through Missouri, into Illinois, Ohio, and through the mid-Atlantic states, southern Pennsylvania, and off into the Atlantic. That's just my speculation according to the Euro model, if I had to guess where that storm is going. Other models don't have it moving in that direction whatsoever. Let's see, this one's the Canadian storm model. This has it making landfall in the New Orleans area on the 13th. Before it makes landfall, goes across the southern region of the United States, kind of weakens a bit and heads out through the northeast and into the Atlantic. And let's see, the JMA. Let's go backwards. Really, it doesn't have it showing up much at all on their forecast models. So back to the GFS we go. Oh well. And once again, we'll take a look at that system. GFS doesn't have much of it. If anything, this could be just a tropical depression at best, according to the GFS. Lots of rain to the south, though. I mean, let's not lose perspective here. We're still going to see lots of rain down here. It's just we're not sure if we're going to see it in the form of a strong hurricane yet. The Euro model says yes. The GFS says no. This is classic model wars, as we always see this time of the year. We'll just have to wait until we get closer to the event. But let's take a look at the rest of the United States weather. Across the south, we stay wet. Upper Midwest stays wet as well across the Great Lakes. Western New York on July 14th, we'll be dealing with a hurricane in the Gulf. And then the precipitation that we're going to experience in Buffalo on the 14th. is going to feel like tropical moisture, and that will spread across the state of New York, move off to the Atlantic Ocean by Monday, before on Monday, July 15th, actually looks pretty decent when you talk about precipitation. Things kind of look a little quiet mid-month, but not for long as the atmosphere reloads and begins that wet pattern once again. And now we're seeing bouts of moisture in the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, and the Northeast. And of course, this same little ridge line right here is going to continue to just track moisture over the same areas that don't need it. And like I said, we will be talking more about crop reports on our next broadcast, which is on Wednesday, 9 p.m. Taking a look at our weather for our friends up north. Lots of precipitation in the BC area, still a flow. That's where we're getting all this moisture for the upper Great Lakes and the northern plain states. A constant flow of moisture being shot through the northwestern parts of the United States, coming from Canada, the BC area. So if there is a silver lining in this, the state of Kansas, for the most part, you're looking at a good chance of dry weather starting on the 11th of July. And that is an extended period, for you farmers out there in Kansas and Nebraska, and it looks like Missouri, we get about a 5-day period. Yeah, about 5 or 6 day period of drier weather. So good news there for farmers out there in the mid. But let's check out temperatures. I mean, are we even warm enough by, let's say here, let's go the 11th, 13th. I mean, good Lord. Daytime highs, low 80s, some 90s in western Kansas. That is hot out there, by the way. I've lived in that part of the United States, and it gets really hot in western Kansas. Not so much towards the eastern side, but desert hot out there in the plain states. So, dry weather mixed in with heat. This could help the crops a little bit. Is it enough? I don't know. Looking at the heat in the northeast seems to be dwindling, in my opinion, as we get closer to the end of July. And then looks like around the 24th of July, we see it increase along the East Coast. We'll get a heat wave. The central plain states and Texas, normal weather there for you. Same with Southern California and Arizona. Parts of Northern Cal, a little bit hot. Typical summer pattern, folks. Unfortunately, summer and this hot and dry weather is about 30 to 45 days late for most of these farmers who, yes, this is good. We're getting some dry time. That's awesome. But the damage is done, folks. And we can only hope that we can get some suitable work done and get these crops going. Let's hope that we can see the moisture. But, our evidence doesn't show us that we're going to see a decrease in cosmic rays or a decrease in, these rain bomb events, flash flooding all over the world, not just here in the U.S., but everywhere. So that's going to pretty much cover everything for tonight on Monday, July 8th, 2019. Mari, would you like to come over here and greet everyone? We'll take a look at this, North Atlantic. It's off the chain right now. Pretty warm.
People are asking what La Nina and El Nino is doing, and I just said it's pretty neutral.
It's very neutral. How about almost zero? So that's pretty neutral. And I think a lot of folks were predicting, especially Noah was predicting an El Nino to go through late fall, which that is falling apart quickly.
Fizzle pop. I just stepped on something. Don't worry me. It's just your cell phone, Jake.
It's probably
I'm just knocking it over. How's everyone doing in the chat? Wow, hard to keep up with what everyone's saying in the chat, but I did catch a few things. Riverstick88 says Texas corn is being eaten by army worms.
Oh no.
Grasshopper pesticides are ineffective so far from what he can tell from driving around.
I know I always do this to you, but when you make these comments, you bring them up and I have to comment, but isn't this the same problem that they're having in China?
Yes. Yes, Adapt 2030 has covered that quite a bit. David Dubine,
Interesting.
He's been talking about this armyworm problem quite a bit. It's not just the weather. We're having this increased moisture is allowing more bugs to come out, pest bugs. So, and not only bugs, there's people discussing disease plants. I recently read a paper that was speculating that cosmic rays might have some type of correlation with like trees. If you look at all the trees, they have like a weird green like fungus on it. I forgot what it's called. But there's actually research going on, people trying to trace back and seeing if it is in fact cosmic rays that are doing this to the trees, which that's what they're speculating apparently. So interesting. Edith Eden is new to our channel and she did a super chat. Thank you very much, Edith, from Texas.
All right.
Zenith says cosmic ray levels should reach levels much higher than during the previous grand minimums because we're also experiencing a magnetic pole reversal, which also weakens the magnetosphere. So
I can agree with that.
We have several different challenges that we're facing, and pretty much what people need to do is just be prepared. Get prepared. Start today. Plant, potatoes. People are recommending beans, things that are easy to start, and get stocked up. Robbie says he'll see us Wednesday. He very much missed us over the weekend, and he has bought a few things to support our missions for GSM. So I'm assuming he means t-shirts and stuff. So thank you very much, Robbie. We appreciate your support very much. And all of you in the chat spending this time with us for the hour or so, couple hours a week with us, we really very much appreciate it. You all are very wonderful. And I'm just tired. I got a case of the Mondays today, Jake. Can you hear it? I'm just not this happy little ray of sunshine that I usually am, It's
all right. We're good.
That's all I got, Jake.
All right. Thank you very much, guys. We appreciate you tuning in to the Grand Solar Minimum News Update tonight for July 8th, 2019. Please join us again on July 10th, Wednesday, that is, at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for another Grand Solar Minimum News Update. Please check us out on Twitter at Grand Solar Min, Facebook, Grand Solar Minimum. Also, go to our website, thegrandsolarminimum.com. That's thegrandsolarminimum.com. And for all you Patreon members out there, we dropped a podcast interview that we did with an kind of like an agriculture talk type podcast called Moving Iron. So we have uploaded that on our, if you're a member of Patreon, you can go ahead and check that out at your earliest convenience. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us tonight. Please take care, and remember, we will talk soon.